I was raised in a loving and stable family that did not go to church. My dad was a pilot with Air Canada, so my childhood involved flying all over the world. And as a young person, it became really clear to me that there are many different religions, many different cultures, many different ways to see the world. And I was rightfully taught to be respectful and open-minded about all of them. In 1993, my family was living in Miami, Florida, and it was during that year that I learned that my parents would be going through a divorce. That was very, very difficult news for me. And somewhere in that time period, there was a group of Christians that started making friends with me and kind of telling me about Jesus and church. And it was a really puzzling thing for me because the more I hung out with these people, the more I liked them, as long as they weren't talking about the church and Jesus stuff, that is. But when they bring up the Jesus stuff, I remember passionately telling them, like, that's your story. Please keep it your story, because that's not my story. And I'd tell them with all kinds of colorful language where they could put their faith. Eventually, somehow, they kind of misled me to think I was going to a house party. They actually were taking me to their youth group. And when I learned that we were going to their church, I was in the car. I literally wanted to open the door and bail and just do a barrel roll on the grass, because in my head, I thought, church, there's going to be some guy in a tight collar preaching at us and telling us what to believe, and there's going to be kind of geeky, nerdy, needy people all over the place needing to hear that God loves them so they can make it through another day. I know that sounds harsh, but that was kind of my stereotype at the time. But when I got to this youth group, all of a sudden my stereotypes were completely shattered, because there were people from the football team there were some good-looking cheerleaders there were people from student council, and it kind of dawned on me, these people go to church. Maybe there's something to this. And the more I went out to this youth group, the more I felt accepted and a part of them, the more I felt like it was a fun environment, the more I realized they're not trying to tell me what to believe, they're just teaching what Jesus taught. And all of a sudden, I had a whole bunch of new questions that I hadn't had before. I started to read the Bible for myself. And I remember over the course of weeks saying, I think this is what I want to, I think I want to follow Jesus. This guy knows what he's talking about. I wrote in my Bible on March 14th, 1993, I said, 3 years from this date, I will be a Christian. And the reason I wrote that was I had all kinds of behavior and all kinds of beliefs and things that I knew would need to change if I was going to call myself a Christian. I thought I had a lot of work to do in order to become a Christian and give myself that title. And I remember 3 nights later, the message of Jesus became so clear to me when I was at youth group, that God accepts me and loves me as I am, and that Jesus lived the perfect life that pleased God the Father, and if I choose to have a relationship with Jesus, I'm good. And I remember saying a prayer that night to just invite Jesus into my life. But when I got home from youth group after praying this prayer, I became very doubtful and skeptical. I remember thinking, what was that all about? Did I do that because I felt peer pressured? Was I brainwashed? Was the pastor just really eloquent? And I decided to put God to the test right there in my bedroom. I said, God, supposedly you're everywhere at all times. Supposedly you're all powerful. Supposedly you're all loving. If that's true, I need you to prove yourself right now, just you and me here. And I remember asking God a very specifically worded question. And I went ahead and I flipped through the Bible and I randomly put my finger down in a page. And when I opened and looked and to see exactly where my finger was, it was so freaky. It was exact wording to the question I had just asked. It was like a direct answer. And I remember in that moment thinking, oh, I'm never doing that again. I was really creeped out by that. I thought, wow, God did not have to prove himself to me, and he chose to do it with such a petty little request. I don't recommend you or anyone else do that, but for me, that was something God used to just convince me this is a real experience. And over the coming weeks and months, I had a renewed purpose to my life. I found a new spring in my step, and everything I was experiencing at church was just so practical and helpful to my life, and it just became an amazing experience.